Well, thank you for staying, because when I walked in and the meeting went, it was a bit like the Titanic, wasn't it, with everybody? Yeah, opera. It's really weird when you mention the word opera to people. It's a bit like Marmite. You know, some people say, well, that's just for posh people, or it's expensive, or whatever. And I say, no, I don't like opera, it's in a foreign language. And it's not what opera's about. Opera, when it started about 400 years ago, yes, it was performed in palaces, and it was only performed there because they had these extravagant plays, and in the plays that went on for hours and hours and hours, they had musical interludes. People started to enjoy the musical interludes more than the plays, and it grew and grew until eventually a chap called Perry wrote a complete story to music. From then, it became so popular, and this is the big thing, that some people said, this shouldn't just be performed in palaces. This is something that everyone should be able to attend. It should be for the people. And that's when commercial opera started in Italy. Funnily enough, the first place that it went to after Italy was Poland. You wouldn't automatically think probably Germany, France, whatever, but no, just because there was a nobleman that was in Italy, loved opera, and he took opera to Poland, and that's where the first female composer actually had a work written. Now, opera can be funny. There are loads of comic operas. There are political operas. But there are also operas that just tell a story straightforward, and this is where we come from. We've worked how long have we been working now, Bridget? Well, we started off as Opera Box. 1989 as Opera Box. We're both trained singers, and we set up this company, and we used to do opera outdoors. We did it at stately homes, English Heritage, Caddo, all of that. And you'll be surprised the amount of people that come to open air opera that probably wouldn't go to a theatre. And I think a lot of that is because they feel there's some sort of etiquette that they don't understand. Well, opera in theatres, honestly, it's quite relaxed these days. You don't have to go in your best bib and tucker and bow tie and everything. You can if you wish. But outdoor opera, I think, has brought in a lot of people to this art form. From there, Swansea approached us and said, look, we'll give you a bit of funding on condition you change your name from Opera Box to Swansea City Opera. So you never get anything for nothing. So we became Swansea City Opera. The sort of work that we've done is not just putting on operas. We get opera to places where the people who love opera can't even afford to go to an opera theatre. So we've performed in churches, we've performed in halls, we've performed in proper theatres. We were the first opera company ever to put on an opera at the Hackney Empire many years ago, and the queues were all the way round the street, because this is new. We've introduced opera to a lot of people. We've actually written operas before. We've worked with people who are homeless. We produced an opera about travel, and we worked there with a group of people that were homeless in Swansea. We also performed and wrote a piece for other people throughout. That one was performed at the Waterfront Museum, and it was so people loved it so much that it went then to the Senedd, because there were some of the politicians were there, loved it, and we had to redo it at the Senedd in Wales. We've worked abroad with different groups. 2 years ago, we were out in Lebanon. We worked over there. We went over there 4 or 5 times. And what that was to do is working on the refugee camps. And on the camps over there, what we were doing was actually recording. We trained people there to record their own society, what they do. There was things like needlework, cookery, dancing, art, and it's all of their own, what would call it, their culture. So the whole thing was to get the culture recorded, and we were in a partnership with the American University of Beirut. And if you go onto their website, you will see a whole thing about Syrian, Palestinian culture. And that's a project that we did so that it's not lost. Fantastic thing to do. So we've done all sorts, including an opera about the last deep pit to close in Wales, which was Tower Colliery. I don't know if any of you ever remember Tower Colliery, Heseltine, all of those people in those days. Well, it was the first colliery to be bought out by the management wanted to buy it, but then the workers bought it from the management because the management wanted to sack all the workers and then bring them back on a lower pay scale. But the workers themselves, with a chap called Tyrone O'Sullivan, actually bought the place out. And we did a full-scale opera. The composer was Alun Hodinot, one of the greatest Welsh composers of recent times, who unfortunately passed away some years ago. Michael Owen wrote the libretto, that's the words. He has won several, again, he's passed away, he won several BAFTAs. So it can be political. What happened to us was there was a radio program. And on the radio program, I think it was an Australian chap talking about men's sheds. And Bridget looked at me and said, this needs to be out there. More people need to know about men's sheds. How can we get men's sheds out there with what we do? Answer, let's write an opera. So the first thing we had to do was what we call a pilot project. The Arts Council wouldn't fund this project as a whole project, but they said, what we'll do is funny if you just give us a snippet, a taster for the opera. And then if it's successful, if you like what you're doing, we'll fund a full production. So we got together, we went around to several sheds with Robert here as our guide. He was our sheepdog in Wales. And we went around to several sheds and we recorded the stories of these people. Now, the stories themselves, we told them right from the start, when we're recording, no, your names will not be mentioned. Not only that, we will mix the stories up. So although we've got the stories, they're actual stories, we mix them in so that a fictitious person may have several strands from several people's different experiences. So this is the way we've gone about it. On top of that, when you talk to someone about, well, it's an opera about men's sheds. First thing is, what's men's sheds? Is this just the bottom of somebody's garden? No. And then you explain men's sheds and they say, well, it sounds as if it's going to be a bit of a miserable evening, doesn't it? The thing is, and the big revelation was that when you're in the sheds and these people are together, it's fun. They can just relate to each other. There's no real hierarchy. They're all equal, all talking to each other. And the thing that Robert said to us right at the beginning was that men talk to each other shoulder to shoulder, not face to face, whilst they're working. Hence the title, Shoulder to Shoulder. So that's where we've got the title from. I've been collating the stories and writing the libretto. Now, when you write a libretto, there's obviously got to be a thread, a story through that. So what I've done is created a story within the story. So what I've got is a relationship. It's not going to kill the opera if you go and see it. Between a father and a daughter. And because of the unfortunate incidents that's happened to the father, he's lost his wife, he's lost his son, there's friction between the daughter and the father. He eventually, through her, goes to men's sheds. And it's due to him going to men's sheds that actually repairs their relationship. So this is the sort of understory between the story. Now, what we're going to do now with this pilot, if we're all ready to go, we had a composer, and he wrote a couple of pieces for us with the libretto. But then, unfortunately, through unforeseen circumstances, he's now had to pull out. We've now got a new composer, so we've had to start again. But the pilot was so successful that we have been given the funding from the Arts Council to complete the project. What you're going to hear now is a piece from the original composer that we had, a chap called Caradog Williams, and what it is, this. If you imagine what you hear at the beginning is bashing and hammering, and what it is, it's the guys going into the shed. And then you'll hear this particular piece with the men in the shed. So if we can do that, that would be grand. So that was one of the pieces. The words are still there. We've got a new composer coming in who is at the moment working on reworking that piece. But as you can see, what is the difference between a musical and an opera? Well, it's just a perception, really, of what's in the orchestra, how big it is, if there's dialogue. It's all different things. It's real crossover stuff going on at the moment, which is great. So is this going to be a musical or an opera? To be honest, as long as the quality is good, I couldn't care less. And as long as it gets the story out there. What we'll be doing at the performances is we're going to involve the sheds. This is of prime importance. How do we involve the sheds? Well, first, choruses. We've worked for many years with amateur choruses, and what we're hoping is that one or two people from the sheds will actually join in the choruses. How will we do that? When the music is written, we've worked with amateurs before, we put it on what's called the cloud, it goes to them, and they can listen to it and they can learn their own part individually, and then they will be fully rehearsed with the other people. Secondly, we need a scenery, a set. And the set, which I've been designing, very simple, but it looks like a shed, a workshop. What do I want in there? I want the stuff in there that is made at the sheds. There's a fantastic Pinocchio downstairs that I saw, stuff like that. And Robert, we went round the other day, we were around the squirrels. They've got these sheep stools, things like that. I want to dress the whole stage with stuff that's been made by the sheds, from different sheds. And at the end of each performance, yes, they can sell it to the audience. So they'll be involved front of house. That means that when people are coming in, it's yes, can I look at your ticket? Where would you like to sit? They can do that sort of stuff if they would like to. There's programs to sell. So will there be program sellers? We'll need those. After the program sellers, they're selling their stuff. There's the involvement on stage. I actually want some volunteers, not many, just to what we call dress the stage, so that they'll just be moved around. I'll make sure one of our professional singers, again, acts as a sheepdog so that they know where they've got to be at the right time. But they'll be, if they want to, they can be on stage as well. I want this involvement. The other thing is that the audience coming in, they have to be leafleted. They need to take away something, not just the programme, they need to take away information about men's sheds that they can distribute to other people. So all of this is to try and progress the men's shed movement. It's been a huge eye-opener to Bridget and myself at the good that this movement does. It's fantastic. The people that I've met at the sheds and the stories that I've read, and whilst I've been in tears just listening and writing. I can't believe what has happened to some of these people, but get them in a shed. Now, they're different people. It's fantastic. What I would like to do now, you know what our men's sheds is about, what the opera's about. We've got the performance dates that'll be up here. We're going to 6 places. One or two of them are actual theatres, but others we want to not just be in theatres, we want to get out into other places. So we've got, for instance, the Helder Centre on Holyhead, that's a theatre, but the community hub, theatre, Milford Haven is a theatre, but this community centre, another community centre, the studio a cappella for the premiere in Cardiff. It's a converted chapel in Cardiff, and they sell fantastic pizzas there as well. If any of you can get to any of these dates, please do come along, do support it, and any involvement you want. Now, for the last few minutes of this, me blethering on, have you got any questions? Anything you'd like to know? Yes?
How about going national? Because basically you're looking at Wales there.
Yes.
I could think of a few theatres where I live that maybe would take this on, I don't know. But it could be something that rolls out nationally. I
think that is what we would like to do. It's not a problem, but what has happened at the moment, this is funded by the Welsh Arts Council. That's the difference. So it has to be in Wales. Once it's up and running, I would really love this to roll out through the whole of the UK. I'd like to have it filmed. The men's shed movement started in Australia. Wouldn't it be fantastic to do this and then send that film over to the Aussies and say, look what we've done. Why don't you do it? Get on to this and do it in Australia. Do it in other countries. I don't want this just to be, this is mine, it's Welsh, it's mine. No, I want it to get out there. So yeah, the answer is yes.
And will there be a video of this that we can take around with us as ambassadors?
Yep.
It's something that we could propagate out as well.
Well, I would love to do that. I will tell you, it's being a professional, I have to tell you the one or two glitches with that as an idea. PRS, right? So there's the PRS. We have to have all the singers, they're professional singers, the musicians involved are professional musicians. All of that, it has to be contracted, they have to be paid for the job. To do the performances in England or Scotland or Ireland, wherever, again, it's a different pot of funding, which once we're on the road with this, we can revive it at a later date, and we could then roll it out in other places.
Could I just also finish off?
Yeah.
I'm a member of the University of the Third Age.
Fantastic.
Would the same copyrights and all that apply if the University of the Third Age took it on?
I think just to have it recorded, you have to pay the singers and the orchestra a fee. But if you said it wasn't going to be commercially sold, then they would say fine.
Well, that's exactly
When
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
when you said it, that's the problem.
But even though it's not being sold as a commercial product, they still have to be paid for the recording time and all of that. Yeah, yeah. If we can get the funding, we can do anything. It's just convincing the right people and making this project so good that they can't refuse it. Yes?
Yeah, you sort of on the same lines as what that gentleman was saying. I'm English, I'm from Birmingham, I live in Wiltshire. Luckily I'm married to a Welsh woman from Merthyr Tydfil, so I actually understand where you're coming from. The issue was listening to that, it was very Welshy.
No, there's a story. Right.
I can say that married to a Welsh woman.
Well, not only that, we could do it with a Birmingham accent. How would that be? Oh, that'd be all right, wouldn't it? So the thing is, was really strange. Robert was there when we recorded this. They're all Welsh singers. When they're taught to sing, and they're all Welsh speakers. When they're taught to sing with an English accent. Do you know how hard we had to work with them to get them to actually sing with a Welsh accent? Yeah, so we had, exactly. So what we had to do is work with them. They said, well, how do I sing that? Because when you're singing in opera, whatever, the vowel sounds are really important. And once you start squeezing these vowels in a different way, the voice comes out in a different way. It's all part of singing technique. So once they've sung in a way that we should, in inverted commas, be correct, we then had to say, no, I want to do that with a Welsh accent. How do I do that? They could speak it with a Welsh accent. They couldn't sing. We had to work for it, didn't we? And it was really funny. We had a really good laugh while they were trying to get this Welsh accent. So, yeah, I take on board exactly what you're talking about. The idea is, it is shoulder to shoulder, but it's Menshed's Cymru. We've got to get the piece composed yet. The chap who's, Lenny is... Lenny Sayers is composing now. He's a clarinetist. Is he clarinetist? Yeah. He's a clarinetist in the BBC Welsh Orchestra, but he's done quite a lot of composition, and he's working with us at the moment. Doing what you said is great, but it needs to be composed first. We can't send this out because he's no longer the composer, so therefore there might be problems there. Any other questions? No, they're freelancers. So a lot of singers are freelance singers, so you get the jobs when you can get the jobs. But these singers that you heard there are already contracted for the dates. They're already contracted for the rehearsal period, and so they're all buttoned down, and including the musicians. The musicians, there's only going to be about 4. Is it 4? There are going to be 4 musicians in the what we call the pit. But there's going to be a keyboard, clarinet, cello, and percussion, with weird percussion instruments. There's loads of weird stuff in the percussion stuff.
It did sound amazing. Hearing it, I mean, I had goosebumps. It was in the a cappella studio.
This is the other thing that people don't quite understand, people who are not familiar with opera. Opera is actually fun. It's fun to be in it. It's like any team sport. You're in there, you're working for each other. And that's the great thing. But with opera, it's not just, an orchestra. They all work for each other. They know what they've got to do, don't want to let anyone down. You've got then choirs. They don't want to let each other down. You've got scenery. You've got lighting. Then you've got the main singers that are doing ensemble stuff. But they all have to not let each other down. It's a complete team. That's what the word opera is about. That's what it means, is that it's just a complete art form. It brings in all the other art forms together. Shall I give them a demo? Yeah. Vedi amare quanto è bello, spirito di sentimento. There you are, that's enough. But it's just work. We're Swansea City Opera. We're quite open. Just get in touch through Robert, and it'll come to us. And any ideas, great ideas, and help. Just let's get it together and make this project work. Thank you ever so much for inviting me along and Bridget along to have a chat with you. And I think the jobs that the Men's Shed movement is just too good to miss. It's fantastic. Thank you all ever so much.